We think that businesses need to have technical understanding, business people, right? And the tech folks need to have business understanding, that they're both very important, that if the technical development people, the designers, all of the groups who are working on products don't have the business context, then it's hard for them to make all the many small decisions that they need to make all the time when they're doing their work. And business leaders need to understand enough about their tech teams and what everybody is doing and how they're operating so that they can have healthy exchanges with them, help plan the work, make important decisions for the organization. It doesn't mean they have to become engineers, of course, right? But just to have enough knowledge and understanding that there's mutual respect and they can work with their tech teams to improve the productivity of the organization. Individual empowerment and good leadership. This really came out of a lot of discussion we had around the concept of self-organizing teams and the need for both individuals and teams to have some level of autonomy in the choices that they made about how they did their work or even possibly what they're working on. And at the same time, teams need good leadership, but it needs to be the right kind of leadership, right? Like we're not talking here about the old school, micromanagement, authoritative, do what I say and don't ask questions type of leadership. But at the same time, it's important to have things like a tech lead who can make the call when there's some really difficult technical choices to be made. You might need a design lead who can make decisions about user experience that are authoritative and definitive and help the product succeed. So it's important to have good leadership and the right kind of leadership, and to give individuals as much autonomy as is reasonable given the context of what you're doing and the context of what you're trying to work on. And finally, adaptability and planning. I've heard people say that we don't need to plan because we're agile. I don't think anyone really quite believes that, but the idea of planning just 2 to 4 weeks out and always being responsive all the time and not having longer range plans is really, really difficult for companies when they're trying to do budgets for the next half of the year or the next year. They're trying to make big decisions about hiring and organizational structure, product direction. And, the answer, well, we're just going to, plan in 2-week increments and we can't plan that far out is not going to work. So planning is really important, and sticking to a plan may not be so important, especially when circumstances change. But the planning itself, the exercise of planning, of really trying to figure out what are we trying to do and how are we going to tackle this, is really valuable. And being adaptable, being able to adjust, abandon your plan if you have to, if the world changes and you have to change your business operations for some reason, maybe you can't stick to that plan. So you have to have both, some planning and some adaptability. And again, it all comes back to balance. So I'm going to pause here for a second and see if anybody has any questions or any comments on anything.
There's just been a couple of things that, so glad you found it valuable. Applied improvisation boot camp. Everyone should take an improv class. And then somebody just commenting, they love this list.
Good. Has anyone here ever experienced any of these pain points that I described, the things that led us to our conclusion that we needed to rethink the values and principles? Someone said yes. If you want to share your story, I'd love to hear it, or you can just type it in the chat if you feel more comfortable doing that.
Yeah, so Actually, a lot of the points that you did mention are actually situations that I do face with most of my teams, especially the individuals and teams. And most of the times, one thing I notice with the teams is we find ourselves, or even with other Scrum Masters, even myself, I do that, right? So I find myself most of the times focusing on guiding the team towards, you know, look at this as something that we have to achieve as a team. Look at you know, focus on what the bigger picture is for the team. And sometimes I get a pushback from the team where someone would tell me like, well, I was hired for this. This is my own unique, skill, and this is how much I can bring. And at the end of the day, I may not be able to fit into, the bigger picture of the team, but my uniqueness should be able to contribute to that bigger picture. So I actually do think that there is a need, or there was a need. And now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like, oh, this is something that I should have been thinking about. And that's not even the only thing. Coming to the business understanding, and then having the technical folks understand the business part of the whole organization of the work. I think right now I see a lot of technical folks getting lost with their own work. They just focus on their work, and sometimes when they start working on something, you ask them, what is the business value of what is the business outcome of what we're working on? Most of them are unable to actually identify that. So I think that's an area where a lot of teams are lacking in, and they actually really need coaching around there too, and help around there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's challenging. I've had the experience with engineers where they've been, I don't know the right word, they've been left out of awareness of the business operations for so long that it's just not something they think about. They focus really just on their technical part. And the idea of trying to think about that is a little overwhelming, and even in some cases, a little scary. So when we say business understanding of the technical side and technical understanding of the business side, both are needed, right? Because a technical person may not have the means to gain the perspective that they need. And they may reach out to somebody in leadership and ask questions and essentially get an answer that amounts to, don't worry about that. That's not your responsibility. So of course, that's probably the first and last time they're going to ask about that. So it's kind of a two-way conversation, bringing together of, the business side, understanding that the tech teams really need to know more about the business value of the work that they're doing, and that the business folks need to understand a little more about the technical side, because when they don't, we all have probably seen this, where technical debt just rises and rises and doesn't get addressed. Teams aren't given the time they need for refactoring because they're constantly building out new features in service of the business need, but actually neglecting technical debt is not a good idea and undermines the business goals as well. Business leaders who don't understand tech at all and who don't respect their technical leaders who are saying, these are some sort of housekeeping types of things we need to do, where we really need to tighten up whatever it may be, data or security, then, they can run into trouble. So what we believe is that both are really important, and that the conversation between those different stakeholders is what's really important. And so anything we can do to facilitate those types of conversations and give people the broader picture is really helpful.